I represent one of the hardest hit communities in the hardest hit city in this country, Queens, New York. 13 dead in a night in Elmhurst Hospital alone. Our community's reality is this country's future if we don't do anything. Hospital workers do not have protective equipment. We don't have the necessary ventilators, but we have to go into this vote eyes wide open. What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history. Shameful. The greed of that fight is wrong for crumbs, for our families. And the option that we have is to either let them suffer with nothing or to allow this greed and billions of dollars, which will be leveraged into trillions of dollars, to contribute to the largest income inequality gap in our future. There should be shame about what was fought for in this bill and the choices that we have to make.
So per usual, AOC is absolutely right. The House just passed the bill after the Senate passed it 96-0. That included Bernie Sanders, other liberal Democrats in the Senate and in the House, because as AOC pointed out, the Republicans are shameless enough to put the Democrats between a rock and a hard place. Vote for this corporate bailout where our donors get the return on their investment. These big corporations that funded our campaigns, we got to make them the number one priority, not the unemployed, not the poor, not the sick in this country who are being hurt at an insane rate by this coronavirus pandemic and all of the unemployment and all of the layoffs. So the Republicans were basically acting like mobsters per usual. Vote for the corporate bailout, or who knows what we're going to do. Who knows what we're going to do to the millions of Americans. This is just a little summary of why AOC is so outraged about the corporate bailout. The bailout package voted on by the House today includes $454 billion for the Treasury Department to hand over to the Federal Reserve. This was initially $425 billion, but they topped it up in the final bill. That money could then be placed into a credit facility and leveraged up 10-1, creating a $4.5 trillion money cannon aimed at the largest corporations in America. The Fed has a printing press, a computer really, and can conjure up whatever cash it needs. If only the Fed could find a way to conjure up trillions for the rest of America. I mean, we have a healthcare crisis in this country. I keep hearing how we can't pay for Medicare for all. Oh, we could just find $4.5 trillion? The Fed could just blow that at corporate America? The reason that Democrats and good progressives like Bernie Sanders, AOC, voted for this is because the bill also included $350 billion in, forgivable loans for small businesses if they retain their employees. No similar provision for corporate America, by the way. That's not even really, the better parts are $100 billion for hospitals, should have been more, $150 billion for state governments, $600 a week in unemployment insurance for regular Americans, and just basically guaranteeing that they'll get paid even if they've lost their job during this time. And then just the $1,200 in cash, that's an abbreviated version, for Americans making under $75K. So I hear where she's coming from, because that's exactly how I would have voted if I were a representative. This is why it's so important to not have the Republicans control the Senate, because they behave in this mob-like way where they don't care how many people get hurt. Their number one priority is line go up so my donors give me money. And so it's not the behavior of people who are actually supposed to represent the interests of their constituents. And so I think AOC was absolutely right there. I understand why her and Bernie Sanders voted for this bill, because the Republicans were twisting every limb on the Democrats to make sure that their donors got their money. And the number one priority of good people like AOC, like Bernie Sanders, is getting relief to Americans. And unfortunately, the Republicans used their good hearts to leverage that for money for their greedy, greedy donors.